one thing that came to mind when I thought about what we could talk about in the conversation is I remembered back maybe 30 years ago when I was new in bonsai, and when I was looking for information online, I found your blog, I found your photos, and what I found most interesting was that you were a thoughtful writer about bonsai. I read about the categorizations of different kinds of styles and different ideas about how to approach bonsai. And I'm curious, what made you think to start recording all of that in writing?
Well, I spoke to people about some things, and I realized they don't understand what I'm saying, not because I'm not clear, I think I'm very clear, but because this was so strange and new to them. And maybe in the beginning, when you have a great idea, you are not able to really communicate that well. And I had to learn that, and the best thing is sitting down and write an article about this, because then you sort out your brain. And so I wrote articles. I know that my articles are good, maybe very good. So I'm a good writer, but I hate to write. So that's my problem. You can ask me a question, I can speak for hours, but if you tell me I have to write this down, then it's hard work for me. In the end, the result will be good. But at that time, I was not well known. I had this thing that I gave up a very well-paid job in order to do bonsai. And then I found out that nobody cares about me, and I had to spread my name. So I found that in the beginning, the internet and the Internet Bonsai Club and all these places and the forums and the blogs were the thing to do. So I jumped onto this digital thing very, very early. And that was a huge advantage. I tell you one thing, you wouldn't sit here today if it weren't for the internet. Because I can dream up whatever I like. So if I can't reach the world, I will be a nobody. But the internet helped me, and I had this great advantage of having made my money in the IT business. So the internet was, of course, also new to me, and how to write an email was not so simple in the beginning, but at least I had a big advantage over other people. Even despite my age at that time, I was only 50 or 50 something, I mean, a very young person. But even at that time, 50-year-old people would not go to the internet. And now I'm 81, and I'm installing my own computer and everything. A brand new television is almost like a computer, and all this thing. And I'm comfortable with this. I'm very happy. So the internet helped me to do that. And then, of course, you have to produce content. So what's the content? I mean, I cannot show my face there all the time. I have to show some good trees. And then people ask, why does this tree look so funny? Okay. Okay. So this is how that started. And then I wrote it down and wrote an article. At that time, I also wrote articles for magazines. Magazines were very, very important at that time. Bonsai Today was the big thing. And others, and in Germany, the magazine of the Bonsai Club Germany was the thing. They were what today is the internet. Mm-hmm. Okay, and if you write there, you're present. And this is what I did, and with success, with big success. But then I found that I don't write the ordinary thing, like things basically which everybody knows or should know. I wrote what I've discovered, which nobody knows. But what's also interesting, and found out that I irritate some people, but not because I want to irritate them. I don't want to irritate them. It's because this was not what they were used to. And also the kind of trees I made after a while were not what they were used to. In the beginning, I started like every normal person. I read the rules, and I looked at the pictures, and learned how to do a bonsai. And my bonsai looked very much like Jonas did a drawing. Okay, so very fine. So I can say I'm a student of Jonas. I've also met him in person. I was never in one of his seminars, but as a student. But I sat there watching him doing a seminar, listening, which is almost similar, or is almost the same. Anyway, I'm a student of Jonas, but my trees looked like Jonas trees. Probably not as good, I'm sure not as good. But anyway, this I thought was bonsai. And from then on, I learned So this is why I very, very much understand what people thinking when they tell me what they think is bonsai. So my answer is, when I was very naive, I would think the very same. Okay, so this is how that started, and this is how I came to write articles. I don't do that anymore, though.
Overall, how big a role do you think those articles played in the role you've played for the bonsai community over the years?
At that time, a tremendous role, because there was a lot of people who wrote a lot, and the majority of it was pretty much nonsense. And I tried to, if I wrote something with a basis, and something what I really thought through, and that made a big difference. It caused some controversy, and also controversy makes you famous, maybe for the wrong reason, but it makes you famous, okay? So if people talk about you, it doesn't matter why. But it's not that I wanted to be controversial, it's only because I had thought things through and had clear ideas, and people had no clear ideas but said that this is wrong. But they hadn't given it 5 seconds. I've thought for this for 5 days. I mean, so maybe my thoughts weigh a bit more. Well, how arrogant can you be to think that we are all even? The problem with the internet is we are all the same. You say something, I say something, so it's even. Okay, so well, 100 people say this, I say yes. So yeah, but maybe my voice is more important. Well, you got a shitstorm if you do that.
So most people practicing bonsai today weren't necessarily practicing bonsai 30 years ago. What's one of the best examples of something you wrote about that proved controversial?
Well, for example, what you're citing, I clearly said that in the English and also in the German language, we are using the word style totally wrong. Really? Walter, are you trying to teach us the English language? Yes. So and I wrote this long article, and of course, nobody understood that. I read it again and said, oh God, now I understand. This was way over their head. But the content is clear. I mean, you understand it, you read it, but you can agree that was way over their head. So now I don't press it too much. I always say, yeah, but this basically is a form and not a style. But then I don't insist on that.
How do you define that difference today between a form or a style?
Okay, I think it's very, very simple. We call something modern, we call orthodox bonsai style. Everybody, what's that is, okay? We call something modern bonsai style. Now, who do you think coined that term? I did one time in order to make the difference, okay? And at that time it was called contemporary bonsai style. Right. I said, oh, wait a minute, contemporary means the style at the moment. But at the moment, are we not doing orthodox bonsai style? Something new, maybe that's called modern bonsai and naturalistic, and some Beijing, it's all contemporary. But this is different styles at the same time. Oh, that makes a lot of sense, Walter. So modern and style and contemporary is not the same. But of course, many people have different problem with that, to simply understand that. And now it's even worse, because now we have the cosmic style, and then we have some other people inventing something new, which is great, because we have turned bonsai into an art form. 30 years ago, it was clearly a craft, a commercial craft, which there's nothing wrong with commercial. You want to make money, you do something that the market wants, okay? And that was the creation, what the bonsai they created. And then modern bonsai came, and it was still for the market, but for a different market and from a different personality who also didn't think much of rules. Okay, so only people who don't think much of rules create new things, right? So these are the rebels, and later on become the famous people who started something or not. Okay, you can also, just because everybody is against what you're doing, does not necessarily mean you're a genius. You can also be a fool. Okay, so I was a fool quite often, but not because I discovered many things, or invented. So I thought I invented them. Now I discovered many things, and many were wrong. But over 45 years, you learn a lot. And anyway, the internet really made this happen. Without the internet, we would not be here.
I remember in that era, I had just finished my studies in school, and so I remember reading these articles academically. And what really stuck out, and to this day sticks out, were the descriptions of these different directions one could go in bonsai. And what was most poignant about that is that the descriptions I saw in your articles didn't necessarily line up with the pictures I saw in Japanese magazines. It didn't line up with the trees I saw in bonsai shows. And so that made me really curious all those years ago. I look in the Japanese book, where is this fairy tale style? I look in this other book, where is this naturalistic style? I look in this other show I go to. And it just made me start thinking, where do we see good examples of these different things? Now, in your articles, there were often many great images, and so we could see that. But it started me on a journey to start understanding because I knew a lot of people responded strongly, so I knew it was striking a nerve, and that made me want to study more. And I just found it interesting that, oh, maybe there's this whole other world of bonsai I don't know about, and with my limited early internet day resources, I couldn't find a whole lot.
I totally understand, and also this controversy. Looking back, this controversy helped me a lot to clear my thoughts, because I really had to be careful what I wrote, because they would tear it to pieces anyway. But I think at that time, probably people had the impression that I'm basically saying, all what you're doing is wrong or not right. I do something much better. You have to follow me. That's what the impression was. I never meant that, but maybe that's how it came across. Nowadays, I'm much more careful. I clearly say there's something which I can add to what you're doing. Or anyway, maybe that's an improvement. That's an addition. And by the way, this bonsai side, or the way you do bonsai, that's not like a religion. It's not, don't have to decide whether you're orthodox or whether you're modern or whether you're naturalistic or Chinese or what have you. You can do all of them. Oh, really? Yes, you can. Well, because it's not a religion. If you said, I'm Catholic, I'm Protestant, I'm Jewish, I'm atheist, I'm Buddhist, please, you must make up your mind. But in bonsai, you can say that. Go to my garden. See, there's something from every side. I have penjing, I have Japanese-looking trees which come from Japan. I have modern trees. I have absolutely crazy trees. I have incredibly strange pots. And I have one very normal licked classical things. So I really practice this just across. And it's a lot of fun. And the big thing is, it gives you a big advantage over if you have only one side. If you do orthodox bonsai, you better have material that obeys to orthodox rules. Otherwise, you have a big problem. Now, in my world, I just take the tree, look, what is he good at? Okay, is he or she good at orthodox? Yeah, okay, make him orthodox. If he does, so I can decide for the tree, with the tree, what he wants to be. And I have a much wider angle. And I can work with dogs. And I love this. I buy a lot often. I go to people, and in the last corner there's something which sitting there for many years and nobody knew what to do. And this is the tree I want. Because I will do something with it. And sometimes that's spectacular. And usually it's always cheap. Okay, so this is sort of how I got a lot of trees in my collection. And by the way, I've spoken to Kimura one time. I have actually had a lot of contact with Kimura in the 90s and early this century. I was often on the stage and moderate him. And I asked him, why did you introduce these modern sort of style of bonsai? And he said something very interesting. He said something along the lines, well, I learned in this nursery, I learned a lot, and then I wanted to stand on my own feet and have my own shop, but then you need a lot of money to buy the material and everything and to start it, and I had no money. So I could only take the trees that were very cheap or that gave to me because nobody else knew what to do with them. And then I was stuck with these trees and had to find a way of styling them. That's pretty cool. And then he found at that time, very strange methods and very strange sort of results. At that time, strange insofar as they were not what we were used to. I remember very well when I first saw a book which showed Kimura's work. I said, "Oh, this man is a sculptor. These are sculptures. These are not bonsai." And I think, yes, that's what they were. But he introduced something which now we call, I call modern bonsai. Maybe it's not Kimura alone, but at least he's closely connected to that radical change. That's a radical change. And I spoke to him about why he would do such a radical change. You know what he answered? "I never did a radical change. I'm only doing orthodox bonsai." And I thought, God, is he not aware of what he's doing? Or this is a Japanese answer. Do you in Japan not rock the boat? I think that's it. In Japan, you don't rock the boat. If you hide to be a rebel, you are a rebel, but you hide it and you pretend to do everything what you want. In Europe, in the Western world, it's very different. For us, an artist is someone who does rock the boat. And it's okay, he has to. He can be a fool, but if he just does what he has to do, he's not an artist. So it's radical different. So anyway, I thought that's an interesting sort of thing that I noted, that he would not admit that he has started a revolution.
So you mentioned bonsai in Europe. Are there things you see in contemporary exhibits or in contemporary practice that are interesting to you? Do you see some good signs of progress?
I see a lot of progress. Well, of course, I am not happy with the overall thing. And if I am around in 20 years, I will still be not happy, because you can never be happy. You always see something, and if you maybe are a bit ahead of time, you're anxious because a lot of things are as we did them 30 years ago, 40 years, old-fashioned. But then on the other hand, why not? Okay, but I see a lot more variation now. It's not so much conformity. I see a lot of people who apparently understand modern bonsai style. All these masculine, boom, these powerful trees, they were not there before, and they now dominate. They win all. So this is a radical change.
That's a big change.
I was also in this field. I also did that, but I think this is already something of the past. While they think they are on top of the world, I say, well, if you think you're on top of the world, probably from now on it goes downhill. Maybe, but what comes next, I don't know. But anyway, this is now almost overdone, almost too many powerful trees. I really like them, but then is there not something that, like a bit too much deadwood, a bit too much curves, okay? So in arts, somebody starts something, and then they improve it, and at one point it becomes grotesque, and that's the end of it. And are we not there? Maybe. I hear some people coming back from the trophy or from some other places and say, "Oh, this deadwood orgy." I hear the word deadwood orgy. That means there's way too much deadwood. Well, okay, maybe. Anyway, however, I like the diversity. It is possible, even if you say, this is not so good, it's there. But in the old days, it was not supposed to be there. Every tree had really had to behave, be according to the rules, and be accepted by some committee. And now you can put strange-looking trees there, especially if you have a name. I can get away with anything, but I don't exhibit anymore. That's another story. But I could put anything there. Okay, so I think the modern conventions and the exhibits there show that there's huge progress. So there's a big number of people who are good. Now let's say, like in 30 years ago, there were about 2 handful of people in whole of middle of Europe, Germany, who could really do bonsai, and now there's 5,000, and of these 5,000, 200 are good. And about 20 are very good, and about 2 or 3 are outstanding. So, but that's big numbers now. Okay, similar thing in America, I think.
One thing that I never would have guessed is, and this is also very different when I think of European bonsai versus American bonsai, is If you had told me 30 years ago that the majority of people doing bonsai will have continued in the vein of very traditional conservative bonsai design, but they would become very liberal in their tastes for different kinds of containers, different colors, different glazes, different forms. We have proved very conservative with everything base of the trunk up, but everything supporting that, we see containers in all kinds of different shapes, sizes, and colors that nobody would have imagined, well, at least I couldn't have imagined 30 years ago.
Oh, that's clear. Yes, we have a lot of very interesting pots. You can see a lot here. And
it's like we're afraid to experiment with the tree, but we're fine experimenting with the
if you go to the trophy, there's 35 potters. 35 potters. I think the whole of Asia doesn't have that many. So anyway, but they produce it like a factory. But these are all individual artists. Yeah. So we have a lot of pots. But also, of course, something is overdone there. If you have a very traditional looking tree, my take is, you please put it in a traditional pot. Okay, don't take a fancy pot for that. But some people do that. But anyway, so it's a free country. Yeah, you can do that.
Which is kind of back to your comment about the deadwood, is it's hard to know how much the right amount is unless you know how much too much is. And so I think it's kind of fun when you can see people that go a little too far with container extravagance or deadwood extravagance.
You mean to say they can do whatever you like, but and you don't know where the limit is, but I can see it. Whether if it's too much, then it's too much.
We know it when we see it, and we're all going to see it
That's
or interpret
correct,
that a little differently.
Yeah, but then who do we think we are? Yeah, well, I think our opinion weighs a bit more than others, but does it really? I mean, do they listen to us? But yes, there is. I agree, there's a lot more playing with pots. There's a little playing with trees, but not as much as I like. And of course, I am also doing something there, which is the introduction of artificial stones versus slabs. First of all, slabs, well, there were always slabs, but the way I use them, not. Okay, so also colorful pots. So yes, I mean, you have to, with a conservative tree, you do a conservative pot. But as an artist outside of bonsai, would you not know that black and red go very well together? And if it's green, that's fine, that's a complementary color. Okay, if it's black, red, and green, that's fine. So I have a black background, and I have a black trunk of a cherry, and I have the green of the leaves. I have white flowers, and I have a bright red pot. So I started that 10 years ago. So that's one of these playful things which never happened before. So when I put it in there, I thought, wow, that looks cool. Pooh, oh, I love this. And then I did nothing. 3 days later, my wife, who never ever remarks about my bonsai, said to me, "Walter, are you colorblind?" I said, what? She said, "Don't you see that this red pot is terrible?" It's terrible? Oh, I'm onto something big here. So I said, okay.
Did you go out and buy more red pots?
If you want to know what the general public will say about it, then ask my wife. So she said, okay, how come my wife thinks it's terrible and I think it's genius? Okay, let's see. So anyway, this is what I did, and I'm grateful for that others are also very strong in that.
It's funny, you made a comment a few minutes ago. You said, do our voices count a little more than average, or maybe they don't count at all? And what that's getting to is who's determining which trees get into exhibits and who determines who wins awards. And I think that's where, for a lot of people, the rubber hits the road about whether or not it's okay, or I might say encouraged, to try new directions. And that's where things can get a little testier.
In the old days also it was who gets into the magazine and who is on the cover. Now the internet has replaced a lot of that.
Yeah.
Okay, and the internet also has made our exhibits not so important.
Hey, you're right about the magazine covers. I remember that was a big deal editorially, who would end up on the cover, because that really set the tone of, it was the definition of mainline bonsai at the time.
At that time, so the powers to be basically were the organizers of shows, the judges, and the magazine people. and the bonsai politicians. And now the internet has taken away a lot of power from these guys. It's a radically different sort of way of doing. I personally don't go to shows anymore. I don't show my trees. No, too much bother for what?
What would it take to make a show more compelling for you? Ignore the hassle, but what would make it more compelling?
Well, if it were not just lining up trees, and if it were not just putting one tree of every member in there, because this member is also working and setting tables, so he has the right to put one tree. That is silly. So we have to do it like at the trophy, where somebody is judging quality, and only quality trees go in there, period. And in normal shows, that of course, for good reasons, doesn't happen, but that makes them parochial.
How would we get out of that trap and make these events less parochial?
Well, by accepting that this is an art, not just saying, people say, well, bonsai is an art. Well, but and then they behave like it's what? Like an amateur craft. So in an art exhibit, I mean, somebody decides that what goes in, and that's it. So we have to be a bit more clear about this. But on the end, are we not shutting out a lot of people? Well, in Europe, you can do that. You can say no. In America, it's extremely difficult to say to somebody who is nice, a donating member of the committee, I mean, he is bringing his tree. And that doesn't matter what the tree looks like. In Europe, we do that, but that doesn't mean that we are much better. Maybe there's more people who actually do bonsai here than in America, I think. But whether that's better or not, I don't know.
The students you're currently working with, are they optimistic about what they're seeing in the bonsai community now?
I think many are. So I see a lot of young people, for my taste, young people like in their 30s. I even have people which are in their 20s. I have teenagers here. I have children here. So they're optimistic about it, and they don't think about whether bonsai has an importance in the world, because they don't know the past. And they don't know how in Japan. In Japan, it's only for old people, and they're all dying out. It's a dying out art. And here, it's not dying out. I'm not saying that it's booming and you cannot make a lot of money. Oh, no, absolutely not. You cannot make a lot of money in bonsai. But you see more and more people doing bonsai, and young people, and you're seeing better and better trees.
So this is interesting. When I imagine the students coming to work with you now, or that you interact with it all, they've probably looked at thousands of images of trees online, and students 20, 30 years ago, they may have seen some magazines, they may have seen a book or two. Do you see some difference in how they're perceiving or approaching the craft?
Oh yes, and it's a big advantage. And they also have read a lot of things about watering, wiring, styling, and things. Everything you can find everywhere. So nobody reads books anymore, but everything is in the internet. So they have a lot of information. And in my seminars, it's my job to sort this information out. So why is that right or not right, or so how to look at it? But I can go at a much faster pace than I used to 30 years ago, because I can assume that even an outright beginner knows a lot already. He has read a lot. He has seen these. And 30 years ago, people had absolutely no clue, because there was no internet. They had never seen a magazine. Okay, so this is easier. On the other hand, it's also more difficult, because they know too much. So I have especially people who are already doing this for 5 years, they think they're experts. And how do you tell this person that 50% of what you're telling me is not very good, okay?
I enjoyed watching you working with your students recently. And one comment that came up, and there was always a puckish tone to it, was that the Murano effect may or may not be kicking in at any given time.
Oh, the Murano effect. This came up from a man that was in my workshops a long time ago. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. And he was totally underestimated. He had a handicap, and he seemed to be like a bit disturbed. But I realized this is a highly intelligent person. And he said, oh, the Murano effect is working. And I spoke to him and I thought about it. What does he mean by the Murano effect? Now, the Murano effect is actually very useful in my seminars, because it brings up a lot of knowledge in a very short time, and it makes people who already think they know everything rethinking that and then do a bit more. How does that happen? You put them all in one room and let them watch each other, and they cannot keep secrets anymore, and then they criticize each other, and then somebody sees, oh God, this person is doing much faster wiring than I, or oh wow, I would have never seen that if you tilt the tree. So and so you get a lot of impressions, and in the end you're much better. And in Murano they did the following: the Venetians, they were very rich, but they would have to buy very expensive glassware from France at that time. So they decided to do their own glass. So they thought, okay, we have money, we pay these glassmakers from in the forest. There was many individual glassmakers, but they all had their secrets and their own way of doing glass. We pay them to come here with their family and to stay with us, and then they had some, and then they say, okay, this is not enough. Now we send an army and just grab and put them here, and said, we have good news for you. You stay here, but the bad news, you cannot leave the island. Okay, and then they put them in one factory, and in this factory they then had to work together, and 10 years later the Venetians had the best glass in the universe. So that's the Murano effect.
It felt at times more decentralized than a lot of classes I saw. People had a lot of leeway to do the work they were doing, and it was almost more of it wasn't fully collaborative, because people they kind of owned the work they were doing on their own trees, but it wasn't a centralized thing. I didn't see you correcting the entire time as much as contributing to kind of what they were doing as people contributed with each other. It was a little different than the normal workshop
Well, it's a much higher level than a normal workshop, and some of these people are already world famous. And it is my style to sort of let them loose and do their own thing. Even if I think, oh, I could correct this, but now let's see what happens. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And they can see from the way I look at them. And actually, I work on this assumption that no remark is good news. If I say nothing, it's okay. So I would intervene if something goes wrong, but I let them loose. I give them confidence, basically. And I work with somehow giving them confidence, and they don't even realize that. But they go out and they are better. I can see that every year they're getting better, while others with that I see outside more or less do the same that they did 10 years ago. My students don't.
I think a lot of people would like to foster that kind of an environment. What do you think it takes to put together such a group of people that can learn from each other and advance like this?
Well, you should be clear about what quality you want, and the masterclass for me is something for masters to get better. So it's not a class where you learn to be a master. You're already a master, and you think you know everything, and you go to the master class in order to find out no, you didn't know everything. So you're getting even better. If you learn something, you have this learning line, and it goes up, and then at one point it tops. And the master class is here where you want to go up again. And this is what that's good for, okay? And if you really think you know everything, you're not going to learn anything. But here we make it pretty clear to you that no, you don't know everything, but not by punishment or by being rude to people. It's more like, I don't know, I'm not quite sure anyway how this happens, but I see the effect, and the effect is great.
Are you still learning from your participants?
Well, that's basically one of the things why I'm doing. I do this for 45 years. After 5 years, I knew that I knew everything. Okay, 40 years ago, I already knew everything. Okay, 30 years, 10 years ago, I knew everything. But then I look at what I wrote then, and at the pictures, say, God, I would not do this today. So I did not know everything. Of course, now my age, now I know everything. Well, I want to live another 10 years, at least, to then look back at what I'm telling you here and say, this was a lot of nonsense, I know much better now, so that I'm still on the learning curve. This is why, don't ask me why, but this is what I want to do, otherwise it wouldn't be worth my time.
I know that you almost assume a long-term game with the development of any tree. I think I heard you say 5 times over the weekend, that 20 years from now you'll be 101 and what I want to see in this tree in 20 years. And so one of the most common comments had to do with what a tree might look like 20 years in the future.
Well, it's not only making fun of my age, but that's always true. If you're 20, think about what your tree should be in 20 years, because that's the sort of time frame we're thinking about. I'm very lucky that I have done it so long and now can see the results. I can see, for example, what Deadwood looks now that I did 30 years ago. For 30 years ago, we were very innocent. We just thought quick and dirty Deadwood is good enough, and now you see what that looks like. Sometimes I say, oh, that looks pretty cool, and sometimes I say, that was very amateurish. Anyway, bonsai is a very long time game, but it makes also fun short time, but you also always have to think in the long run. And many measures are not for the present beauty. You sacrifice momentary beauty for future quality. And I keep repeating that over and over again. And of course, in these times, people we have very quick results. I think America is not better than we are. Everybody wants to be a master tomorrow. And everybody thinks that we do this tree in one afternoon because that's what they do on the shows. Okay, this tree will take 20 years before it looks good.
Do you get a lot of excitement or enjoyment of seeing the successes of your students? Do you follow their careers and pay attention to?
Well, certainly, I am quiet about it. It's not that I communicate with them really, but I do in a very subtle way, because once in a while I like what they're doing, and sometimes I don't. And you bet they notice that, okay? And sometimes I just share it, and sometimes I share it and love it, okay? So I know very well how to play on that piano, but then I follow that, and then I can see, and sometimes that's not so good, but sometimes yes. And I with great joy, I see that people are progressing. It's very difficult to really judge someone very well in the beginning, even if you have a lot of experience in judging people. When I was in real life, in business, I had to hire hundreds of people and judge them there, and then 3 years later see whether my judgment was right. And so I learned how to judge people. But then you say, okay, I judged him high, so put him in the class. 2 years later, I say, oh God, he's here. I think, how do I get rid of this man? He doesn't quite fit. And then I don't get rid of him again. And 4 years later, he's a genius. So, how did that happen? Okay, it happened several times. So for some reason, there was a good reason to start anyway with him. So this is hard to describe.
But it sounds like you get some enjoyment in it. You actually are paying attention to what your students are doing.
Oh, I'm very much paying attention to my students, because how can you judge a teacher? How smart he is, and how good looking or what? Or you can only judge a teacher of how his students are doing. So so my students have to be good, very good. I expect that. And they have to work on getting better all the time. They cannot sit down and say, now I've learned everything. No way. And I sure want my students to surpass me. And I want in my class people who think that they have already surpassed me. And it's my job to show them, no, they have not. Okay, but maybe one day I will have to admit it. But it's not a race really. So the very best thing that can happen to me is that my students become big names afterwards.
And that would be a great day when you do have to admit something like that.
Yeah, but by the way, it's not a big deal for me. So because I expect that.
And you don't need to rush to it.
No hurry.
So it was fun. As I've watched, a lot of your trees are very well known. I've seen pictures of them for decades. And one thing I see, it's not just that the trees get better over time, but they look older. Not that a tree looks 10 years older than it was, but it looks like a tree's been in the mountains an extra 100 or 200 years or an extra 500 years. Do you find yourself trying to bring out great age in trees?
Yes, definitely. I don't go for beauty. People will be very surprised. Is an artist not doing beautiful things? No, Really? No. An artist is doing things that impress, that leave a mark. And you can impress with beauty, but you don't. In bonsai, 99% try to impress with beauty. I also have some beautiful trees, but you cannot impress with others. You can impress with size. So this is why big names have big trees. With size, it's easier to impress. With age, it's easier to impress. With character and with deadwood and all these things. So I like people to not forget this tree, for whatever reason. Maybe because they didn't like it. Oh, this was a tree that I didn't like, but they remember that tree. You see, but those that they like, they forget. So that's sort of how I go about this.
I remember 10 years ago now, you were part of a panel that judged the trees at the 2015 Artisans Cup in Portland, Oregon. And what was great is at the end of the event, you and the other judges participated and answered questions about how you went about judging the exhibit. And one thing that I remember from that talk is that you described standing in front of a tree and essentially letting whatever the tree had to offer wash over you. And it's like, what is my impression of this tree? Is this tree making a big statement? Is it making you feel a certain way? You described in very visceral terms how your response to the tree was kind of the key to your evaluation of the trees. Does any of that ring a bell, or did I just invent some fun story?
No. I said, so how do you judge a tree? Well, people try to have objective measurements, like is a nebari good, is a topsoil good, and this and that, and did you follow the rules? And in the end, who wins? The most mediocre tree, okay, because it has no faults. The tree that has the fewest faults will win, and that may be a boring tree. Okay, so I say, forget everything about this. I stand in front of this and let the tree impress me. And if I can feel the soul, even if it's a nasty soul, or a good soul, or a strong soul, the stronger I feel it, then the better it is for me. And it's the artist's job to style the tree so that this happens to me. And I think I'm not a naive bonsai person. I have seen so many trees, I can't judge that. But I can see, oh, this person tried very much to follow the rules. For my personal taste, that's not good enough, and now comes the crucial thing. But if he really followed the rules very well, does he not deserve higher rating? Although that's not my personal taste. What do you do as judge if something is not your personal taste but still good? Huh? Yeah. So there I had this problem. So you know what, you give him high points. And people later said, how can this be? This is a cookie cutter tree. No, it's not a cookie cutter tree. This is basically, but he goes that direction. So he got high points because he did everything very well. So they believe that I can only like what is my taste. So, well, then I'm not a good judge. Because then it's very clear what you have to do in order to win points. So anyway, judging is not an easy thing, especially on a very high level, and people are closely watching what you do, and there's a lot of egos involved. If I can, I avoid being a judge. You can make one friend and 200 enemies. Yep. Okay, so not a good thing.
Yeah, that is not lost at all on me. But you touched on a key idea that didn't come up in your early panel. What gives a tree soul?
Soul? A long time ago, there was this conversation of what's a bonsai? It's a tree in a pot. Well, if you go to a flower shop and there's a little tree in a pot, is that a bonsai? Or you go to the supermarkets and find these Chinese little trees which cost $15. Is this a bonsai? Well, it's a tree in a pot. And then you say, oh, but this is not in a pot, this is on a stone. So this is not so this discussion, no, that doesn't count. So why is it that, for me, where is the difference? And I said it's very simple. A little tree in a container that has a soul is a bonsai. Okay, that sounds wonderful. Now the question is, okay, what exactly is a soul? Okay, the soul is something speaking to me. It can speak in any language, in any form. It does not have to be nice. It's okay. Most speak try to impress me with their beauty. But anyway, a tree that interests me. Okay, and this is something like it's more than just a plant. And then it is a bonsai. Okay, whether it's a good bonsai or not is another question. But anyway, this is my description.
I like that. When you are, how many trees have souls? You described a really nice way of thinking about it. Is that most trees in a garden, or is
in my garden?
In any garden, when you see?
Well, in my garden, most trees have a soul because I only work on soul. Of course, they have a soul, but for me at least,
Yeah.
it may well be that for other people this is just a tree. That's fine. In other gardens, it's very different. Okay, there's some people who do very nice bonsai according to the rules, and nothing has a soul. It happens. It's just they learn technique. And technique is something you can learn everywhere, and it's taken for very, very serious. And a lot of people think, I know all the technique, I can do bonsai. No, you cannot, because it's about soul. Have you ever heard about? No, you have not. Okay, so anyway, I see a lot of different, and then I see people who actually have no idea about rules, but the trees speak to me, so they have soul. Okay, so there are some people who never repot their trees, who let the trees just grow, and some people say, oh, this is a lazy person, but his trees somehow touch me. So, on the other hand, if I go to the mountains and to the forest, I go through the forest to the mountain, I don't watch every tree. I mean, let's admit it, 99% of the trees are just trees. Okay, but then I came to this opening, and all of a sudden there's this boom, powerful thing with this deadwood there. It's a paw. So how do you describe it? I say this has a soul. This has character. It's not beautiful, but it's dramatic. Okay, so this is what I want my bonsai to be. And then I find for material that has these characters already, and I bring out the character stronger, and hopefully it has a lot of this dramatic soul. Or another one that is beautiful, I make him even more beautiful, or her. I like very much to see, oh, this is a woman, is this a lady, it's a child, something like that. I give my trees personality. I treat them already before I really start as person. So I give him a soul already. So and then they have to show me what sort of soul. So this is sort of, maybe that sounds a bit esoteric to you, but anyway, this is how I go about this.
Well, and sometimes it's less esoteric, and you actually have a name for the tree or a person you associate it with, and an entire backstory about the personality of that tree and what exactly it speaks to you.
Well, for me, that's important, especially for trees which I have for a long time and which are close to my heart. I invent some story. You see, I have a lot of time because I do nothing else. And I sit in my garden and I only do bonsai. And I do not always work. So I sit there and stare at my trees, and then I fall asleep, and then I see this, and then my chair falls over, and then I see the tree from a different perspective. And, oh, that's much better. Maybe we tilt him next time. And then I all of a sudden see that, oh, this is what you can do. Or then I see, oh, I love this tree because he loves me, like that. And I said, this man is sort of, but anyway, this is what I do all the time. And and I give them personalities. I don't really speak to them, but they speak to me. And you see, it's like you start out with this little tree, like just coming from the nursery, like with a boy. And then you say, oh, my boy, he doesn't speak. He's not 2 years old. He's 3 years old and he doesn't speak. Oh, God, okay. And then you be nice to him, and then he speaks. Whew, he speaks. Oh, he speaks fluently. God. Okay. And then you say, oh, he's a genius, and they do this and that. And then you see the Nobel Prize winner, and you tell everybody and say, yes, it's ridiculous. They're this silly father or silly mother, and your dog is the most intelligent in the world. We know all that. But then I see that more and more. And one day they see it also. And then I give him a lot of love. Oh, I really believe in you. And I do this and that. And then more and more people see that. And then I sit there, and then they come and say, oh, this is a great tree, Mr. Pall. Thank you very much. I know.
It's funny, I was going to ask you what a beautiful bonsai experience would be if you wake up on your 101st birthday, and you might have described exactly what that wonderful bonsai experience might have been.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And I really love it if some people see what I see in them. So apparently my love comes back. So I've smiled at this retarded child so long that one day it smiles back. But I'm the only one who sees that smile. And then all of a sudden, all the rest sees it. And then the thing shines. And then the tree even becomes very famous, being world famous. Wow, I'm so proud of this. You should not really brag about yourself, but you can brag about your children, right? So I do brag about my trees because my trees are my children.
Well, what can we do to help make this vision for the 101st birthday come true? What are some things that all of us practicing bonsai?
Well, you just keep on doing bonsai, but maybe in a more diverse way. Maybe you listen to other ideas, and maybe you're a bit more brave in choosing trees and choosing pots and choosing whatever forms, and you be more free. You free yourself from this rigid bonsai fundamentalist thinking, which used to be very strong 30 years ago, is not as strong anymore, and feel just free. It may well be foolish what you're doing, but it's free, and something in between may be very good. So there is a need to try new things in art, especially, otherwise it wouldn't be art, and I would like to see more of that. And if that really happens in 20 years from now, and I would really like to think that I was a bit part of that. So you see that somebody described the progression of art as a big lake, and there are stepping stones. There's these important people who were there, and you step over them, and then one day you yourself become a stepping stone, and then they step over you. And I like to believe that maybe I'm one of these stepping stones, and it's sort of my fault why 20 or 30 years later this happened, and that makes me happy.
You were definitely one of those stepping stones. I know that ideas in my head have been kicking around because of things that I read or saw that you've contributed decades ago. And I know that's always informed how I think about whatever I'm looking at. It's like, oh, there might be another way of doing this, or how might it feel to try a different approach, or what do I think when I see a different approach taken by someone else? And so I know that at least in my case, I felt like there's a little bit of perspective that I have carried that I wouldn't have had I only been looking at a much narrower approach to what to do with bonsai. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.